Hi, welcome to What to Read Wednesdays. I'm Marlene. I'm the Adult Services Supervisor of the North Carroll branch. And today I'd like to talk to you about a bestseller that was written in 2012, The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman. She grew up in Western Australia, and so she used that information from her past to make the setting for this book. She then moved and for many years has lived in London as a lawyer. This was her debut novel, and it was such a success. It's been translated in over 30 languages, and I just have really enjoyed the story and have read it many times and recommended it to many customers. Tom is a survivor from World War I, and he's just battling the survivor's guilt, the missing of so many of his comrades and friends that were killed in the war. Why did he make it and others did not? He does not have any physical injuries, but his mind is just so weary, torn from the war, and all of the pain that has come with it. He's just accepted a job as a lighthouse keeper on a very remote island, so remote that it's 100 miles away from the nearest small coastal town. So remote that only a delivery man comes 4 times a year to bring groceries, supplies, and mail. He can't wait to be alone. He can't wait to be away from everyone. He also has the grief of the loss of his mother. He's just estranged from his father. He just is mentally torn in so many areas. He gets the job. He arrives on this very remote island off of the ocean, and it's him and a lighthouse and quiet. Well, other than crashing waves and that kind of thing. Sounds of nature. He loves being away from everybody, and he has just great silence that he loves there. On his first visit to town, though, to get supplies, many months later, he meets a young lady, and they first just catch each other's eyes, but Tom's not a talker. But in the few days he's in town, they meet again, and they do start talking. And they have a long conversation about their pain. He shares his pain of the war, the pain of grief from losing a mom. She shares how both of her brothers were killed in the war and how she misses them and how her mom is struggling so much with the loss of her 2 sons. And she does say something to him, a quote in this story that is very powerful related to the rest of the story. And the quote is, "There's a name for someone who loses a spouse. There's no name for someone who loses a child." Isabel asked if she could come visit the lighthouse, and he said, no, that's against the rules. Only a lightkeeper, and if he's married, his wife, are allowed to be on the island. And she looked up and said, well, so, marry me. He was so stunned, but he said to her, look, you'd have rocks in your head to want me to marry you. But I guess she did. A few months later, they were married. They had a wonderful 3 years. They loved just the 2 of them being isolated and having just a wonderful marriage and loving relationship, so in love. The only thing that was missing was children. They so longed to have a family and to have children. But 3 years and no children. But the delight the day she realized she was pregnant, the delight of, oh, a baby's on the way. She was cleaning up the house and making a spot for the baby and sewing up a storm and clothes and singing and dancing around the house. Well, the lighthouse. But anyway, they were so excited. One night there was a terribly violent storm, and Tom said to Isabel, I'm going to have to stay all night in the lighthouse. I've got to keep everything going in case there's ships out there. I don't want anyone to crash into our island. She was disappointed to be left alone on such a stormy night, but she did. But then, after he was gone a good while, she started with violent pain. And alone, she miscarried. And she just couldn't bear that pain. She was so despondent. Tom tried everything. There'll be other children. This happens sometimes. But she was so despondent. But time went on. She did become pregnant again. The excitement came again. But she was playing her beloved piano one day, and the pain started again. And then Each time after she lost a baby, Tom would bury the baby, put a wooden cross up on top of above the hills there, the cliffs of the ocean, high on the rocky hill. He would build a cross. First there was one cross, then there was two, and then the absolute worst was when he had to put the third cross. She was no longer despondent. She was so depressed. She would not talk to Tom. Every day she would go out and just lay in the grass beside the three crosses and sob and cry. And he would have to plead with her and pick her up almost and try to get her back into the house. But all she wanted to be was laying beside those three crosses. One day while she was laying there, and Tom was in the lighthouse, Tom saw a little tiny boat out in the water, bobbing around. He kept watching and watching through his scope, and then he started hollering for Isabel. And he ran out of the lighthouse, down all those steps. At the same time, Isabel heard something. She sat up, there by the three crosses. I hear a baby crying. She jumped up. She started running to the water. By now, the boat was coming closer to shore. They both were hollering for one another. They were hollering at the boat because the boat would crash into the rocks on the shore. But the boat, thankfully, just washed up to shore. They were able to bring it in. But the shock. There was a dead young man in the boat and a darling, beautiful, young, very young baby girl. Tom took care of the body of the father. Isabel took care of this beautiful little girl, bathing her, calming her down, dressing her in the clothes she had made for her own babies that never came. She was so happy. She was so delighted to have this little girl she named Lucy. She just was beside herself in having this. It gave her new life. When Tom came in, he reminded her that he would need to contact the authorities right away, and she said, no, not yet, tomorrow. Tomorrow came, and she said, well, not yet, let's wait, just wait a little while. The baby needs time to adjust. And then she said, let's just wait till the delivery man comes in a couple months. By the time you would get word or a message out and somebody would come back, it's going to be around that time anyway. He told her, he said, no, we can say we'll adopt the baby. She was so, no, constantly delaying as much as he wanted to hurry it on. It was a dilemma they would face that would echo far beyond this island and far beyond this time. The intrigue and the twists and the turns in this book are amazing. Two of the questions the author says come up about this book in her mind is, can you ever let go of something you love or someone you love? Is true love forever and ever and ever in marriage and in parenting? You will have to read this book, The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman, to find the answers. This is a copy of a large print book, so it's thicker than the normal book. This book is also an audio book and in digital copy. I highly recommend The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman. Thank you for joining me on What to Read Wednesdays. Come back again next week.